All right, we are halfway through our last 6 chapters. We have 3 more chapters to go. And as I keep saying after each chapter, if you are starting to lose focus, please pause the video and come back to it later today or come back tomorrow. You have all week to finish these 6 chapters and do your chapter study questions. So make sure you're focused and paying attention while you're listening and following along. So, Chapter 20, The Departure of Sir Lancelot. Sir Lancelot called all his kin and friends together in the Hall of Joyous Guard. He renamed the castle Dolorous Guard and told them he was exiled and was going back to his lands in France. What would they do? They all decided to go with him, for they all knew that in Britain there would be no peace, but always quarrels and war, now that the fellowship of the Round Table was broken. He offered each of them lands, for he was lord of great provinces in western and southern France. So they took ship at Cardiff and sailed to Benwick, which now is called Bayonne. There Sir Lancelot gave every man the lands he had promised. Then he set out through all his territories to see the preparations for war. He knew that Sir Gawain would come, and he meant to be ready for him. Sure enough, in a few months, Sir Gawain and King Arthur sailed from Cardiff with an army. Sir Mordred was left as governor of the kingdom and protector of the queen. In a few weeks, the British force was ravaging Sir Lancelot's lands. In Benwick, Sir Lancelot held a council of war. Sir Bors urged open combat. Sir Lionel urged waiting until the enemy had run out of food and then to attack them. They all insisted that there was to be no more sparing of the king and showing courtesy, as Sir Lancelot had done in Britain. Here they were on their own ground. King Arthur had invaded them, and they wanted to be free to treat him as an enemy. The result of the council was that an offer of peace was sent by the hand of a damsel and a dwarf to the king's camp. But when she had delivered her message, the king gave Sir Gawain permission to answer her, and the peace offer was rejected. The next morning Benwick was besieged. For 6 months the siege went on. Every day Sir Gawain rode in front of the main gates and took on a knight in single combat, and he always won. There was skirmishes and jousts, but no serious fighting, and the months dragged on. Then Sir Lancelot agreed to joust with Sir Gawain, who had defeated and wounded so many of his knights. They met at last, and the battle was long and hard. For 3 hours they fought, but in the end Sir Lancelot laid Sir Gawain helpless on the ground. He drew back and left him. Sir Gawain ground his teeth and shouted to him to finish him off, swearing that as soon as he was healed he would seek him out again. Sir Lancelot answered that he would be ready for him, but that he would not kill a helpless man. Sir Gawain was carried to his tent and lay there for 3 weeks while his wound healed. When he was well, he came out and challenged Sir Lancelot again. They fought again, and the result was the same. As Gawain lay on the field, frantic with defeat and helplessness, he still brandished his sword and tried to stab Sir Lancelot, shouting defiance at him. Sir Lancelot turned away, saying, "Whenever you can stand on your feet, I will fight you, but I will not strike a wounded man who cannot stand." He went back inside the city gates. In his madness, Sir Gawain refused to listen to any sense or persuasions from the king or his own friends. He did not care if the entire army perished of cold and hunger, so long as his thirst for revenge was satisfied. His only plan was to wait until his wound was healed, and then to fight Sir Lancelot again. But meanwhile, news came from Britain to King Arthur and brought the entire camp to its senses. Mordred had announced to the people of Britain that he had received news that the king and Sir Lancelot were dead, and he therefore declared himself king, had been crowned, and was about to force the queen to marry him. She had shut herself up in the Tower of London, and Mordred had surrounded it. So the Tower of London is the ancient fortress of London, begun by the Romans. So she kind of barricaded herself in. Gawain and his grievances were forgotten. The siege was over. The king ordered his army to pack and make all speed for Britain. That was a quick chapter, but Sir Gawain is bloodthirsty and it's not treating him well. We'll see what happens in these last 2 chapters. And this title kind of, I think it's going to be a little somber chapter. It's titled The Last Battle and the Death of Arthur. So King Arthur is probably going to die in this chapter. All right, let's start reading. Sir Mordred was ready for the king's return. The moment he had planned so long had come. It was he of whom Merlin had said on the day when Arthur won his sword Excalibur that a son of Arthur's sister would be the destruction of his kingdom. The prophecy was soon to come true. News of the king's approach reached Mordred, and he prepared to resist him with a large force drawn up on the Dover beach. But King Arthur was so courageous that no one could stop him from landing, and his knights followed him fiercely. But in the landing, Sir Gawain was mortally wounded. Sir Launcelot was in France, but before Sir Gawain died, he made his peace with Sir Launcelot, saying aloud to the king and all the knights gathered around, "Through me and my pride, you have all this shame and trouble. If that noble knight, Sir Launcelot, were with you here, this unhappy war would never have begun, for he, through his nobility, held all your enemies in subjection." He asked for paper and wrote to Sir Launcelot, asking him to return to England to help the king and to see his tomb. Here's Sir Gawain saying aloud to the king and all knights gathered around. At noon he died, and the knights buried him in a chapel in Dover Castle. Now only Mordred was left of the Orkney clan, King Arthur's own blood, who had destroyed his kingdom. The next day there was another skirmish between the king's forces and Sir Mordred's that ended in the rebels retreating. Then both sides collected their forces for a decisive battle. Mordred's stronghold was Canterbury. The king's strength lay in the west, so he set out to march in that direction, gathering forces as he went. Where the last battle was fought, we do not know. We only know that it was somewhere on a far west seacoast and on a misty day. On the night before the battle, King Arthur dreamed that Sir Gawain came to him and warned him that if he fought Sir Mordred on the next day, he would be killed as well as the enemy. He must make a treaty, postponing the battle for a month, and offered Mordred whatever terms would make him agree. In a month, Sir Launcelot would arrive, and joining with the king, they would defeat the rebels. The king awoke and sent for his leaders and told them his dream. They all agreed to obey it. Sir Lucan and Sir Bedivere and 2 bishops were sent to Mordred's camp to offer terms. Finally, Mordred agreed to make peace at the price of getting Cornwall and Kent immediately and being made King Arthur's heir to all of Britain. A meeting was arranged to sign the treaty between King Arthur and Mordred. With 14 attendants each on the plain between their two armies, neither side trusted the other. Each side was instructed by its leader to be fully armed, and if a single sword were drawn on the enemy side, they were to rush into battle. The king and Sir Mordred met. The treaty was signed, and wine was fetched to mark its signing. As they waited, a snake came out of a bush and stung a knight in the foot. He seized his sword to kill the snake, and instantly both suspicious armies blew their trumpets, drew swords, and rushed upon each other. Back and forth surged their armies. The rebels were driven back, but fought every step, for they knew there would be no mercy for them. At last they found themselves trapped against the beach. The cliffs rang with the slaughter, the trumpets of battle, the clash of the battle axe, spear, and sword, the screams of horses, and the shouts of men. Thus they fought all the day long, and never stopped until 100,000 noble knights were laid dead upon the cold earth. Of all that mighty lost, only 2 remained alive to stand beside the king, Sir Lucan and Sir Bedivere, and they were both wounded. "Where is that traitor, Sir Mordred, who has caused all this evil?" said the king, glaring around on the dead and gripping his sword Excalibur. Then he saw Sir Mordred leaning on his sword among a great heap of dead men. Sir Lucan tried to stop the king, reminding him of his dream and how his life had been spared so far, and that the day was his since there were 3 of them left, and of the enemy only Sir Mordred lived. But the king, with all his knights dead about his feet, would not now flinch. "Come death, come life," he cried. "I see him yonder alone. He shall never escape my hand." They ran at each other. The king's sword thrust right through Sir Mordred, who in his death agony hurled himself forward right against the hilt to strike the king on the helmet and pierce through his head. They both fell. Mordred was dead, and the king was desperately wounded. His wound was deep. Sir Bedivere lifted him up and carried him to a chapel near the battlefield. As they carried the king on that short journey, Sir Lucan died, and Sir Bedivere was left alone with the king. King Arthur felt his end was drawing near, and he remembered Excalibur, his sword. On one side of the blade was carved, "Take me," and on the other, "Cast me away." With that sword he won and held the kingdom, and now the end was near. He said to Sir Bedivere, "Take my good sword, Excalibur, go with it to the water's edge, and throw my sword into the water. Then come back and tell me what you saw." Sir Bedivere took Excalibur and climbed down to the shore, all the way down. The magic and the worth of Excalibur worked in his mind. Sorry about that. Let's read that. Sir Bedivere took Excalibur and climbed down to the shore. All the way down, the magic and the worth of Excalibur worked in his mind, until he desired to possess it for his own. He half desired it for its value and beauty and precious stones, and half as a relic of the king. On the seashore he held the long blade in his hands, and the moonlight turned the bloodstains black and ran like sparks around his hand. He did not throw it. He hid Excalibur under a stunted tree and went back to the king and told him he had done as he was told. Eagerly the king raised himself in his weakness. "What did you see?" "Sir, I saw nothing but dark waves." The king stared at him and then realized the truth. "You have lied to me," he said. "Now go quickly and do what I told you. Spare not, but throw it in." Sir Bedivere went again, but all the way he thought that the king was weak and dying, did not know what he was saying, and that it would be good for the future if the sword were saved. All the knights were killed. The king was dying. There would be not one trace of proof that left of the greatness. The sword must be saved. He hid Excalibur again and went a second time to King Arthur in the ruined chapel. "What did you see?" "I saw the water lapping on the rocks and rippling in the reeds," answered Sir Bedivere. Then the king raised up in majesty, and wrath flashed in his eyes. "Ah, traitor and untrue, now you have betrayed me twice." Sir Bedivere shrank back. "Who would have thought you would have been so dear and precious to me and called a noble knight, that you would betray me for the riches of the sword? Now go again, for your long delay has put me in danger of my life, for I have taken cold. Unless you do as I tell you now, if ever I see you again, I shall kill you with my own hands, for you would let me die for the sake of my rich sword." Sir Bedivere turned and fled. He ran down the rocky path and stumbled over the rocks to the tree, seized Excalibur and hurled it far out over the water. But before Excalibur dipped in the surface, up arose an arm, clothed in white silk, and caught it by the hilt, brandished it 3 times, and drew it under sea. The knight's hair rose up his head. King Arthur heard his steps running and slipping on the path, and knew before he spoke that he had been faithful the 3rd time. "Alas, help me get away," said the king, "for I am afraid I have stayed too long." Sir Bedivere lifted the king on his shoulders and carried him down to the water. There they found a barge hung with black from bow to stern, crowded with figures draped with and veiled in black, and among them a crowned queen with 2 other queens, all 3 veiled in black. From the barge rose a cry of grief as they approached. "Now put me into the barge," said the king. Sir Bedivere did so, and the sorrowful figures laid him down with his head in the queen's lap. As she took him, she said, "Ah, my dear brother, why have you stayed so long from me?" The barge began to draw away from the shore, and Sir Bedivere realized that he was left alone, and behind him lay 100,000 dead. "My lord Arthur," he cried, "what will become of me now that you are going and leaving me here alone?" "Comfort yourself," answered the king from the barge, "and do as well as you can, for I can do no more good for you. I must go to Avalon to heal my grievous wound." The barge was moving away, and his voice came faintly on the night air. "If you never hear of me again, pray for my soul." Sir Bedivere stood still a long time, recalling many memories, until the barge became a black dot against the horizon that was rosy with dawn, and the sounds of wailing from across the sea finally died away. Then he left the shore, climbed back onto the cliffs, and turning away from the battleground, walked all night through the woods. In the early light he came to a chapel, and there he saw a hermit lying on the ground in prayer beside a new grave. "Sir," said Sir Bedivere, "what man is buried here that you pray for so intently?" "Fair son," answered the hermit, "I only know by guessing. This very night at midnight came a number of ladies who brought a dead man and prayed me to bury him." "Alas," said Sir Bedivere, That was my lord King Arthur, who lies buried in this chapel. He fainted as he spoke. When he recovered, he asked the hermit if he might stay there always and serve him and pray for the soul of the king. However, neither of them knew for certain what man lay buried there, nor where the barge had gone with the three queens. No man had known the secret of King Arthur's birth, and no man knew the secret of his end. The king said he was going to Avalon to be healed of his wound, and after he was healed, in the dark days of war and murder, robbery and burning that came upon the land when Arthur's rule was gone, it was whispered that the king was not dead, that he had only gone to another place, and he would come again and set up again the rule of justice and right. Men said that in an unknown tomb in a chapel in the fortress near Glastonbury, there was a prophecy carved in crude letters, scarcely readable. It says, "Here lies Arthur, king that was and king that shall be." That was a cool chapter. I like that one. This is our last chapter, though. The death of Guinevere and of Sir Lancelot. All things are coming to an end. Such a fun and exciting story with ups and downs, and kind of ending on some sad notes, but also I think some beautiful notes as well of, believing that King Arthur is still, out there and will come back when the time is right. Okay, let's read our last chapter. The last battle had been fought, and all the ruling knights and lords of Britain had been killed. The king had vanished on his own unknown destiny, and Britain had no ruler, no court, and no government. What of the queen? She stayed in the Tower of London until the news came of the last battle. Then she put off her royal clothes and dressed in black, and with 5 ladies took their horses early one morning and slipped out of London at the moment the gates were open. Disguised as nuns, they fled across Britain to the west, to Amesbury in Wiltshire, where there was an abbey. The queen became a nun, put on the black and white habit, and led the strictest life in the convent. So the habit is clothing worn to show a religious calling in life. She showed such consistency and goodness, combined with the strength of her character and knowledge of how to rule, that in time she was made head of the convent. There she stayed until the end of her life, but there was one more incident awaiting her from the stormy castle. Outside, Sir Lancelot received a letter written by Sir Gawain on his deathbed, telling him of Mordred's treachery and asking him to come at once to help the king and rescue the queen. He did not know about the last battle. He and Sir Bors at once gathered the fighting force of their family from all over France and came with speed to Britain. They landed at Dover, where they were told the news of the last battle and the collapse of the kingdom. Sir Lancelot made his peace with the dead, Gawain, and knelt for long hours by his tomb. With that, the feud was healed, and Sir Lancelot turned to his next duty. He summoned all his followers and told them that he was going to look for the queen. If he did not return in 15 days, they were to go home. He thanked them for their support. Sir Bors came to him after the council and urged him to take a few friends with him, as Britain was fast becoming a dangerous country again with bandits on the roads. But Sir Lancelot was thinking of other things and answered, "Stay here, for I shall go alone on my journey." He knew where the queen would have hidden, and he rode straight there. He knocked at the gate, and though no man was allowed inside the nunnery, when the nuns at the gate saw Sir Lancelot, they backed away from the gate and left it open. In he walked and passed unchallenged through courtyard after courtyard, the nuns grasping at the sight of him and silently gliding away. He asked one where to find the queen, and she pointed without speaking. He came around a corner, saw her, and stood still. When Queen Guinevere saw him there, she fainted 3 times. Her nuns brought a seat, and Sir Lancelot stood still, waiting. When the queen could speak, the nuns brought him to her. She said to them all, and to him, "Through this man and me has all this war happened, and the deaths of the noblest knights of the world, and through us is my most noble lord slain. Therefore, Sir Lancelot, I demand and beg of you, for the sake of all the love that was between us, that you never see me face to face again. For God's sake, never come near me again. Go back to your kingdom and keep it well from war and harm. For well as I have loved you in the past, my heart can no longer bear the strain of seeing you." Now, my beloved, said Sir Launcelot, do you want me to go away to my country? That I will never do. For I shall never betray all the promises I have made to you, but the same life you have taken to I will take too, and to pray especially for you. Ah, Sir Launcelot, if you would do it and keep to it again. Sorry. Ah, Sir Launcelot, if you would do it and keep to it, said the queen. Madam, never yet did you know me to break my promise. In you I have had my earthly joy, and if I found you so disposed, I had thought of taking you back to my own kingdom. But since I find you have chosen this life, I choose it too. So, madam, I pray you, kiss me once again and never more. No, I will never do that, said the queen, and so they parted. Sir Launcelot rode all day and all night until he heard a bell ringing in the forest. He followed it and found the chapel where Sir Bedivere lived with the hermit, and there he stayed and became a hermit with them. Meantime, at Dove, his friends were growing anxious. Sir Lionel rode to London to look for him and was killed by bandits on the road. Sir Bors decided to send the army home, and then he, with Sir Launcelot's brother, Sir Ector, set out in search. They were led by mysterious fate to the very hermitage where Sir Launcelot was, and there they stayed and lived a holy life with the others. 6 years passed, and one night a vision came to Sir Launcelot. In the night that he should go to the queen, in the morning he got ready. He and his friends walked to Amesbury, and when they arrived at the nunnery, they found that the queen had died half an hour before they came. With 100 torches burning around the bier, they escorted the queen for the last time on the journey to Glastonbury. After she was laid in the earth, Sir Launcelot did not live more than 6 weeks. Neither food nor drink interested him, and although the loving Sir Bors and all his friends tended him, he faded before their eyes. He scarcely slept at all, and was generally found beside the queen's tomb, cheerfully but not interested in living. Soon he was too weak to get up from bed, and he made Sir Bors promise to take him all the way north to Joyous Gard and bury him there. One night Sir Ector woke suddenly, and by impulse went to Sir Launcelot's cell. He found him dead and smiling. Ah, Launcelot, he said, you were the head of all knights. You were never matched. You were the most courteous knight, the truest friend, the truest lover that ever loved a woman, the kindest man that ever came among a company of knights, the gentlest man that ever ate in hall among ladies, and the sternest knight to your enemies that ever struck with a sword. After the burial of Sir Launcelot, Sir Bedivere stayed in the hermitage for the rest of his life, but Sir Bors and Sir Ector went home to France, to their own lands. From there they went on crusades to the Holy Land, where in the end they were killed fighting against the Saracens. And that is it. That is King Arthur. Hope you guys enjoyed the story. Hope you learned a lot, what it meant to be true to your word and true to the highest virtues and the blessing, the benefits that come from that. And also learn that, you know, if you do make mistakes, you can come back, and those that in the story that chose to be evil and, you know, they didn't have the best rest of their lives, and, you know, bad things came to them. It was an awesome story. It was awesome reading it with you. Hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you guys in the next lesson and read with you guys in the next book.